This woman is one of the latest people to be arrested for allegedly helping inmates who escaped the New Orleans jail. Her boyfriend is still on the run, and he is a convicted murderer. The other man still on the run right now is potentially still posting about it on social media. This is a picture of who appears to be Antoine Massey, the same man who you might remember from this viral video last week.
They said that I broke out. I didn't break out. I was let out. My name is Antoine Massey.
We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. We are coming up on 1 month since 10 New Orleans inmates escaped the local jail. Right now, these two inmates are still on the run, Derek Groves and Antoine Massey. Groves was awaiting sentencing after being convicted of shooting and killing 2 people on Mardi Gras in 2018. Massey is facing charges of rape, kidnapping, domestic violence, and theft. We'll talk about the latest in the search for those two in just a moment, but let's talk about the more than 12 people who have been arrested for allegedly helping these inmates before and after they escaped. This is a picture of Dariana Burton. She is 28 years old. This is the picture put out by the Louisiana Attorney General announcing her arrest. She's not only the girlfriend of Groves, the convicted killer, she is a former correctional employee. She's accused of giving at least one inmate a ride after the escape back on May 16th, when the inmates ripped open a faulty door, broke through a hole in the jail wall, leaving a bit of trash talk for the sheriff saying it was too easy, and then running out the back of the jail to freedom. Police say not only did Burton just show up the night of the jailbreak, they say she had a video call with her boyfriend 2 days before the jailbreak. Groves apparently talked to her on a jail-issued iPad. Police say Burton held a secondary device up to hers to allow another man to talk to Groves so he could communicate an escape plan. To show how coordinated this jailbreak was, people on the outside allegedly helped several of the inmates escape. Police say on the night of the jailbreak, sisters of another inmate, Lenton Van Buren, received a FaceTime call from their brother on the night of his escape, and he was in the car with Dariana Burton. Now, Van Buren was captured more than an hour away from New Orleans in Baton Rouge 10 days after the jailbreak on May 26th. Van Buren was in jail on a charge of second-degree murder. According to WVUE-TV, at least 5 people have been arrested for allegedly helping him in connection to the jailbreak. Now here's another picture from the Louisiana State Police. This is of Van Buren being taken to another facility by helicopter. More than a dozen people have been charged so far in helping the 10 inmates escape. That includes not just family members and girlfriends, but people who were inside this jail. Before we get back to this episode of On the Case, I want to bring you a Law&Crime legal alert. Did you know that children under the age of 21 are being diagnosed with serious conditions like type 2 diabetes or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and research is potentially linking ultra-processed foods to these outcomes? Our partners at Morgan & Morgan, they are stepping in to fight to hold food companies accountable. They have decades of experience fighting large corporations, and they're ready to stand up for families who deserve justice. So if your child under 21 has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, go to www.forthepeople.com/food. You can also scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description of this video to learn more. Sterling Williams was a maintenance worker at the jail, and he allegedly turned the water off, allowing the inmates to move that jail toilet without being detected. Williams has said that the escaped inmate Antoine Massey threatened to shank him if he didn't turn the water off. Speaking of Massey, in a bold move, he may still be posting on social media as he's on the run. Take a look at this post from an Instagram account, and according to NOLA.com, police are investigating this post as the second potential post that he's created since his escape. Now this post is under the username _007Chucky with 2 Ys. It's a picture of someone who appears to be Massey. You can see the face tattoos with the caption that says, "My name is Antoine Massey, I'm innocent." Now, if this was in fact done by Massey, this would be the second alleged post that he's made since he escaped the jail in New Orleans.
They said that I broke out. I didn't break out. I was let out. My name is Antoine Massey.
This is the more than 9-minute video posted to a social media account that appears to be of Antoine Massey. The video was first posted on Instagram and it's since gone viral. Massey claims his innocence in the video, and he also calls out some big names to help him.
At the end of the day, I am a good person. So I'm asking for help from the world, from Meek Mills, Lil Wayne, Young Boy, Donald Trump. I'm asking for these people. I couldn't even get a lawyer. I couldn't even afford a lawyer to prove my innocence while I was in All News Parish jail. They said that I broke out. I didn't break out. I was let out. My name is Antoine Massey.
This is the immediate response that law enforcement had to that Instagram post. This is a picture from the Associated Press of a home in New Orleans that police raided quickly after that video went viral. And police say that Massey wasn't inside the home, but they did find some of the clothes he was wearing in that video. So they must have just missed him. Now, this apparently, though, wasn't the first time that Massey has broken out of jail. WWL TV found that he has an escape record that goes back nearly 20 years, starting in 2007 when he escaped from a juvenile facility. The TV station also says that Massey broke out of a detention center in Texas in 2019, and then in 2023, he cut off an ankle monitor. In response to his social media activity, the Orleans Parish Sheriff put out a statement saying that they are aware of that video and they are urging Massey to come forward. Massey's sister has been arrested and charged with helping Antoine Massey after he escaped. Most of the inmates who are now back in custody did not make it outside Louisiana, except for 2 who were captured in a rural town north of Houston in Texas, 377 miles from New Orleans. Those 2 inmates were Leo Tate and Jermaine Donald. They led police in Huntsville, Texas on a high-speed chase. Eventually, the officers there were able to corner them and took them into custody. Here's body cam video of that capture.
Get out! Go with them!
Got hands if everybody can hold it.
Jumbo, good hands? Shut up. Unlock the door with your right hand. Crawl to, no, Jumbo, back up. Crawl to him.
Put it in the car. In the car. All the way out.
Crawl. Back is clear. Slow everybody down.
And here are 2 pictures that the Huntsville Police Department put out of those 2 escapees who led them on the chase, Leo Tate and Jermaine Donald. Donald is the man you see in the white shirt. He was in jail on a charge of second-degree murder. Tate's original charge was obstruction of justice. They now both will be facing additional charges, not just for the escape in New Orleans, but for leading police on that chase in Texas. Law enforcement is offering $50,000 as a reward for tips leading to the capture of those final 2 inmates who at the time of this recording are still on the run. Joining us now to talk about the search is retired NYPD detective and co-host of the Gold Shields podcast, Tom Smith. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. We're entering our 4th week since the escape of these 10 inmates. What do you make of 15 people being arrested, all accused of helping these 10 inmates get out of jail?
Yeah, I know. And you know what? We were waiting for that. We were waiting to see who else was going to be involved in this because this isn't an everyday occurrence. And when you're in a penitentiary like that or a system like that, you need some inside help with scheduling, with access, with all things like that. So that was pretty much a matter of time before all that came down. And I'm not surprised one bit with the sophistication that was used and the timing that was used. It was pretty obvious from the beginning that there was some inside help with this. And, it just took a little time to gather them all up.
I think of this sheriff, and she, here you are, you have this very embarrassing situation where the inmates are able to get out. And then you have people like the girlfriend of Derek Groves, who she used to work at a correctional facility. You have the maintenance man who says that he was threatened to turn off the water. So you have people who are inside your organization accused of helping these inmates escape. What are some of the challenges you see in this particular sheriff's office where it seems like it was a secret to her, but not to multiple people who were close to these inmates in the jail?
Yeah, you need a better vetting system of who you're hiring, and you need better oversight into the jail and who is dealing with who's hanging out with who, whether that's a surveillance system or people on the inside telling you what's going on. But it was pretty obvious that there needs to be more of an oversight into the relationships that are going on in, these facilities and corrections officers or people who just work at the facility. If you have a security system set up, that's going to be pretty obvious once you start going over it, of who is always with who and who's hanging out with who. And I'm sure somewhat of that took place when it came to nailing down who was involved in this. And of course, other people talking, which is no secret in the jail system of who's going to give up who.
And Derek Groves, he was convicted of a double homicide on Mardi Gras in 2018. He was awaiting sentencing, which is why he was at the jail. His girlfriend is arrested. He apparently had a FaceTime call with her from jail, and he had a prison-issued, jail-issued iPad that he had access to. How common is it for inmates? I mean, he's waiting for sentencing, but he's already been convicted of as serious a crime as you can have, and he has access to electronics inside the jail.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I don't get it. That is just mind blowing that you're giving inmates the ability to plan something like this. You're having them have conversations or giving them a roadmap with other people on the outside, and you're giving it to them. It's not even that they're hiding it. These technology that's going on is given handed to them. And, wake up. There's no good intentions here. They're not saying goodnight to their loved ones. This is all about what they can do and how they can manipulate the system and get out, which they did. And that has to stop, not only there, but on any level in any facility.
Right, because as much as I know the sheriff's talked about the millions of dollars needed to bring this local jail up to the level that it should be at. I mean, if you have inmates that are just openly communicating about escape plans with their loved ones on the outside, I mean, there's only so much you can do in that case. In your experience, and this isn't the first time that we've seen, and particularly talking about Derek Groves' girlfriend, this isn't the first time that we've seen someone who's romantically involved with someone who's convicted of a pretty serious crime. How is it that someone gets romantically involved with someone who is going to be in jail, prison for the rest of their lives, and then is still able to be manipulated from the outside? Why is that something that we seem to see more than once?
Yeah, you see it a lot. I mean, you see these relationships blossom even while they're in jail, of this celebrity status that some of these individuals have. I mean, Charles Manson had it, and look at his track record. It's an ongoing thing, and it's a phenomena that you're not going to be able to figure out. Me and you sure are not going to figure it out on this show, but it's just this thing. But you know what? Here's the good part of it. When it comes to something like this, they're easily tracked down. So when you have an individual that might have, either has a plan to escape or did escape in this situation, it's easy to follow the breadcrumbs and see who is involved and who their go-tos are, and maybe get a greater idea of the plan and the escape plan.
Now let's talk about the search for at the time of this recording, there's two left. Derek Groves, he's accused or convicted, of two murders. And then you have Antoine Massey, who has apparently been on social media since his escape. If you're the U.S. Marshals or any of the law enforcement agencies across the South looking for these two right now, how do you, if you're starting work today, what are you doing to try to find these two people?
Who their best contacts are, who's their go-to people, who do they rely on the most. The good thing about this is, when you're on the run, your resources at some point are going to run out, and not that law enforcement or the U.S. Marshals kind of slow down, but that's going to happen at some point. They're never going to be out-resourced by law enforcement. Money's going to run out, and then you get into desperations. Then you get into criminal activity with burglaries or carjackings or, even shoplifting because you need to change your clothes. You kind of wait for that to happen. But, the other thing is that people need to understand, Chris, there's 330 million people in this world, and you're looking for two. Right. It's not easy, when they're on the run and different ways of getting around. If they get out of a state and into other states, it broadens, what's going on. But I am very confident that in the end, and probably not too much in the future, both of them are going to get apprehended.
What was your reaction when you saw that Antoine Massey went live on Instagram, apparently for 9 minutes? And it was a lot that he had to say. Of course, he's declaring his innocence. He's calling out Donald Trump and looking for people to help him. But here's someone who you would think would be hiding from the spotlight, but he's stepping right into it.
So he wants to be a celebrity. If he hides, no one's going to know who he is. Now, just like everybody else, it's a wow factor. It's a click. It's a following. And you just ask, why do people follow these individuals? There you go. That's why. And he tries to, with this, what is he doing? He's trying to get support, and sympathy from people who will help him. And that's what that all is. It's a calling to those light-minded people who will be in a position to help him as a celebrity, as someone that's all over the internet. But, our law enforcement, keep talking, because at some point, your luck's going to run out of where you are, or an internet hit, or someone seeing you doing it, and it's going to come to a crashing halt soon.
What is the reality for these inmates that they've been recaptured? They've been taken to what the state says are secure state facilities, but what does life potentially look like for them once they're back in custody?
Well, you get rearrested, and you're going to get charges of escape and anything else that may have happened during that time. So you're being rearrested on new charges, and they're going to be tried, and it's just going to be added to whatever sentence they're in. But it is an additional charge, and you're basically being rearrested on escape, and like I said, any other charges that stemmed from that.
What type of facility, a state facility, what does that potentially look like? And I know you're in New York and we're talking about Louisiana, but to go from where they were, which was, I think, from what I get the sense, a facility that was built to hold people as they're waiting sentencing or they have a court date coming up, to where they're headed now, which is more a state-run facility.
Yeah, much more security. Like you said, Chris, it's a holding, where they were as a holding facility awaiting trials or awaiting hearings or whatever it may be. Once you are put into a more of a state system, the security and the prisons are much more under lock and key, much more surveilled, and a greater oversight into what's going on there. So I don't think this is going to happen again with these individuals because of where they're going to end up.
And I think back to Derek Groves, but there was also people like Linton Van Buren Jr. He was wanted on second-degree murder. So these are not, people who have minor charges by any means. How is it that, or because I know you can't really answer that question, but just how common is it that you would have people accused of such serious crimes being held in a facility that's in such rough shape as the one that was in New Orleans that they escaped from?
Well, it depends on that state's criminal justice system and how backed up they are, and their court calendars and when cases are going to get called. So that's going to vary from state to state or city to city, depending on where they're at with trials and hearings and grand juries and all that. And if they're not yet processed or indicted or whatever it might be, they're going to stay in facilities like that because they're going to be waiting for their next step when it comes to their trials.
And when it comes to the search still ongoing, I know the U.S. Marshals are involved. When you bring in the U.S. Marshals, what type of resources do they have that maybe the local sheriff's office doesn't when it comes to tracking down fugitives?
They're the best at it. There's nobody in this country better at it. I worked with a couple of them, on other cases, during my career. They have more resources than anyone, and they have more sources around this country than anybody and any other group or agency. They are the top at it. And that's why I said, sometimes it takes just that misstep that the bad guy is going to make or where they end up, and then they're going to jump on it. But they are the best at it, and make no mistake about it, this guy's not going to be out there for too much longer.
And in the case of Antoine Massey, when he goes on social media, what type of footprint does that leave that the marshals could use in trying to track him down?
All technology, technical databases and footprints and digital footprints of where it was possibly streaming from. And that's what I mean, Chris. Keep talking, keep going on social media, because nothing's untrackable. Nothing. Especially you pick up an electronic device, it is hitting on something somewhere. So that's where, if you have an idea of where he may be, and then you start locating and triangulating data points, that's where you're going to, run into where he is.
Yeah, it's just, it's an incredible story because you see this hole in the wall with the trash talk that said too easy to the sheriff, and they were able to pretty quickly get 8 out of 10 inmates. And I just keep going back to this jail and how there were so many, that there were employees. I mean, you have family members that are helping their family members. They're going to have to pay a price for that, but you have employees of the jail. How can these jobs, because they're very difficult jobs, no one probably wakes up saying that they want to go become a maintenance worker at a jail, but how can these jobs become more appealing, or how can we make sure that we have the type of people that you would want to have keeping communities safe by watching inmates like people like Derek Groves, who have been convicted of serious crimes, in his case, double murder?
Yeah, you know what, Chris? It's like any other job, make it more beneficial to the employee, their pay, their benefits, their hours, all things like that, So a temptation of maybe getting bribed or getting paid or something isn't as easy as this may have been. When you're not getting paid a lot and your rent is coming up or your mortgage is coming up, and you have an opportunity to just maybe, hey, leave a door open. That's what I mean by giving more to the employees and making the job more responsible and more of a kind of law enforcement level than just a maintenance worker or just a corrections officer. Make it something that they're going to look up to and take serious and responsibility for.
Yeah, no, an incredibly good point there because, again, I mean, there's so many people where the right people, it appears, were not working at this jail, along with everything that apparently went wrong for these 10 inmates to escape. And at the time of this recording, 2 of them still at large. Tom Smith, retired NYPD detective. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being here.
Always a pleasure, Chris. Thanks again.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.